Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dollpreneur podcast. I am your host, Georgette Taylor, and I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. I am so super excited. You know, it's so funny sometimes doing the show. We do fangirl. I'm not going to lie. I get a chance to fangirl all the time with my most amazing doll creators, and today is no exception. So today I want to welcome Joshua David McKenney. He is hi, Joshua.
Hi, Georgette.
He's an LA-based artist, sculptor, and doll maker, best known for creating Pidgin Doll. And before bringing his vision to the world of art dolls, Joshua built a successful career in fashion illustration, working with iconic names like Mariah Carey, Elizabeth Arden, and Dolce Gabbana. I want to say welcome again, Joshua, for being on the Dollpreneur podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me, Georgette. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, I'm so happy to have you here. I did tell him before we started, I have been trying to get in contact with him for many years. I've admired his work and really wanted him to be on the show. And I'm so glad that we connected and that he's here. So I really appreciate him saying yes to being on the show with us today. So
Of course, I'm happy to be here. Glad we finally connected.
yeah. So okay. So I want you to take us back a little bit, maybe talk about a little bit where you came from, but mostly uh, I want you to take us back to the moment where Pigeon first emerged and what sparked her creation. Because I know coming from a place of being an illustrator, photographer, all those things, what really sparked your, idea to create a doll?
Yeah, I mean, I got so I go. I mean, see how far back do we want to go? But uh,
As far
I
back as you want to go. That's all I'm saying,
yeah.
right?
I've been doing pigeon now for God, I'm gonna say it's almost like 13 or 14 years now,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even more. But I see, where did it start? So, uh, as you said, I used to work in fashion and beauty illustration. I moved to New York. I grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, sort of in Amish country. So I didn't
Mm,
grow up Amish, but my family did go to like a Mennonite church, and I was raised very conservatively and with very conservative values. So dolls were not something that
mm,
were very encouraged in our house. So I had a sort of interesting relationship with dolls growing up, and um, I moved to New York to go to art school. Specifically, I was interested in fashion design. So I went to Parsons School of Design
mhm,
because that's where all the fashion designers that I sort of admired went, and started exploring other options. I've always drawn all my life, and particularly like my relationship with drawing women and femininity
mm,
and sort of beauty has been sort of a lifelong journey for me. Like my very
mm.
early drawings, even when I was like 2 or 3 years old, are all my first drawings were like Miss Piggy and Olive Oil, Popeye's girlfriend, and cheerleaders and ballerinas, and I was very, and my art really became a way that I could sort of express my interest in femininity in a way that I couldn't in any other way because I wasn't
Mm.
allowed to like play with dolls or really explore,
Right. Yes, the
non-traditional.
feminine part of yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, so so I moved to New York and I studied. I moved around a lot. So like I eventually went into photography. Actually,
Okay.
I decided to switch majors from fashion into photography, and I did. I studied photography for about a year, and then I decided to leave school and just start working. And I worked as a like photo assistant for a long time, doing
Hmm.
fashion photography and working on shoots and stuff, and also started sending around an illustration portfolio because I draw well, and got an agent, and then started to work a lot in fashion illustration. So I did that for a good number of years and just kind of became really fascinated with the idea of doll making because it combined all of my interests
Hmm.
into one like focus.
Hmm.
Um, I also became obsessed with the work of Marina Bychkova of Enchanted Dolls. I don't know if
Hmm.
you know her work. They're these exquisite porcelain dolls. She's still my favorite doll artist, but when I saw her work, it just never occurred to me that a doll could be so elevated and so exquisite and so
Mm.
meaningful and
Yeah.
powerful. And her dolls have this sort of melancholy to them, and they're like, they're not at all intended for children.
Right.
They have a darkness to them, and they have genitalia, and
Hmm.
there's a and I just was absolutely once I saw her work, I was like, I have to figure out how to make a doll. This seems like the ultimate expression for me because it
Mm.
combines fashion and sculpture and hair and makeup and photography and
Right.
puppetry and all of these things that I loved.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, so I basically just kind of set out to start trying to figure out how to make a doll. There was no classes or any sort of,
True.
resources for me. Um, but her work was porcelain, so I was really interested in learning porcelain. So that's kind of where I started.
Okay.
Uh, I sculpted all my dolls by hand, and then I learned how to. I got some books on porcelain doll making, and I learned to make plaster uh, molds for all of them, which is quite
Wow.
labor intensive. Probably took me about a year and a half of doing that before I was able to like teach myself everything that goes into that. And I
Right.
bought a small kiln, and I started firing dolls that way. And so, and the name Pigeon, as a doll or a character, actually happened maybe about 3 years before I started doll making.
Hmm.
I was on a bus going to Boston visiting my boyfriend at the time, now husband, and I drew this girl with a bird wing on her head, and I kind of wrote pigeon, but spelled like the bird on it. And I was like, oh, that's
Hmm.
kind of a cute name for a girl. Like, what would a girl named Pigeon be like? And we kind of talked about it for a little bit, and we started to like imagine her as sort of like either like a children's book character or a comic book
Mm,
character, and she's
okay.
just sort of like semi-magical, serendipitous, maybe kind of Mary Poppins-y
Uh-huh.
hip girl. Um, but I kind of like, I have a lot of ideas and I often forget about them. I I
Understand
kind
that.
of forgot
Yes.
about it. And then I sculpted my third doll, and I knew that I wanted her to be sort of a modern interpretation of a classic European fashion
Hmm.
doll,
Okay.
where she had a porcelain head, hands and feet, a fabric body, um, but her style and her proportions would be like a more of like a modern girl,
Hmm.
Um, and my husband was like, "Well, what about that character Pigeon that you came up with a few years
Mm,
ago?" I was like, "Oh, that's actually a great idea." And immediately, like the kind of the kind of doll she would be kind of came to me,
hmm.
um, and yeah, so that's kind of where Pigeon started. And so I was making her, and she was really large, and I had a friend come over and teach me how to like sew the bodies, and we kind of,
Wow.
I didn't have a lot of sewing experience at the time. I really went into it just sort of like full gusto.
Hmm.
um
Yes,
i
I
just
see.
i just knew I had a lot of work to do, and I knew that it would be hard. I think if I had known how hard it would have been to create my own doll, I probably wouldn't have started, but I'm glad that I did, because it became such a perfect expression for me. And it came around as at a good time, because it's kind of when Instagram first
Mm.
uh started coming, like taking off.
Hmm.
And I started a separate Instagram account for Pidgin Doll because I thought, well, not all of my friends like dolls, and I don't want to like bombard them with this new part of my life.
Hmm.
So I started a separate Instagram account just for Pidgin Doll that was separate from my work as as an artist.
Right.
And I started to get a lot of like fan art. So a lot of girls and people were like taking the makeup and the hair and the stuff that I was doing on dolls and recreating it on themselves. And it happened really, really fast.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I don't know. I wasn't selling dolls or anything, but I was like, there's something here. There's something about me expressing through dolls
Mm,
that's
right.
resonating with people.
Yeah.
Um, and it was really one of the most powerful, meaningful
Hmm.
experiences of my life to see like my work kind of spoken back to me in that way.
Hmm.
And yeah, so just very slowly, uh, illustration work kind of like I put that on the back burner, and I really started focusing on how do I become a doll artist, whatever that means. And I had some friends at the time, or I have my friend Andrew Yang,
Hmm.
who I shared a studio with at the time,
Hmm.
was
I know
hugely
Andrew.
influential to me as far
Hmm.
as like having a friend to talk dolls with and
Yes.
to see his career just took off. And it was cool to see somebody do it on their own terms and sort of invent this career for themselves.
Yeah,
So
that's
that
true.
sort of gave me the courage to do it for myself.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
And
that's kind of the beginning of the story.
yeah, and Andrew was an art doll person too as well.
Hmm.
So yeah, so
Yeah.
it was a really good opportunity, I guess, for you to see, how that can flourish for you and how that can
Yeah.
help you, navigate that system of creating a doll. Like you said, when you think about a doll, that's one thing. When you create one, it's a whole nother aspect of
Absolutely.
of things like that. I remember we thought thinking about creating the big beautiful dolls. It was like, oh yeah, we can do this. We can get some plus size fashion dolls. Like, really? Why would we
Yeah.
even think that? But just trying to take it out of your head and put it into you know, to create something live like that. And not even
Yeah.
that, I think what you mentioned is that before about how you created a separate space for Pidgin, because
Hmm.
you didn't want, part of you probably was like, I didn't want people to notice that's probably what I was doing now with my career, or you didn't want to bombard them with, you know what I mean, like the
Right.
creation that you were creating. I think it was maybe felt safe if you did it that way, so you can still
Yeah.
have control over that, and if it didn't work, you were like, okay, I don't have to share it with everybody that it didn't work, but it did
Yeah.
work, right? And i
Yeah.
think i think what was important, what you said also, is that it allowed you to see that your art and your creativity meant something to other people,
Yeah. Absolutely.
which I think is really, so it's, I think that's, being creative like that is, it's, that's the power behind that, is that
Hmm.
what you, not just what you create is for yourself, but how many other people feel something from that,
Totally,
you
totally. I
know
think that's really like it speaks to the power of a doll too,
yes.
You can um I can draw my fashion ideas and I can photograph them and I can, and those all have power as well in their place as well, but
Hmm.
something about putting all the ideas together into a doll and creating this universe
Yes.
um it just really, I think it just really elevated things
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
also just enabled me to like wear all these different hats that I love to wear as a creative person.
That's
So
what I was going to ask you first before this other question, but I'm gonna ask you this question
sure.
first. So you described, I think, a lot of times Pigeon as not just a doll, really, but as a muse for you. So how
Hmm.
does that inspire you creativity, even now, like before and now? How does that inspire you by it being a muse and not just a doll for you?
Yeah, I mean, she has a very sort of like like the undefinable definition where like I can just tell like, oh, that dress isn't very pigeon or that dress is very pigeon. That hairstyle is very pigeon, that isn't. And it's not always necessarily like just what I like. I mean, it obviously comes
Hmm.
from me, but like I will like something and be like, oh, I love that, but that's not very pigeon, and I won't really kind of use it as a reference. She has
Right.
a very defined like persona outside of
Persona. Hmm.
myself.
Yeah.
Um, and it has very
That's
much to do with
interesting.
like kind of like where I was at the time when she was created and the kind of people that I was inspired by. But yeah, it's it's it also very much was she was created on social media,
Hmm.
and what was interesting about it is because as I was saying, I was getting a lot of fan art and people recreating the looks that I was making on dolls. And the ones that I saw a lot that were happening a lot, I was like, okay, this is obviously becoming something distinctive about Pigeon.
Hmm.
At the time I drew a little heart on her cheek a lot.
Right.
So
Hmm.
people were creating that a lot. Or,
Hmm.
I would do certain hairstyles or flowers or sheer fabric or things like that. And those things that people were sort of gravitating towards. And so who Pigeon became for me was informed a little bit by the audience's reaction to her, which was kind of
Yeah.
a cool conversation really about like fashion and style
Right.
and that sort of stuff. So yeah, no, it's been really interesting. It feels very much like Pigeon was a gift bestowed to me by a muse, and she kind of, it's my job to facilitate her, but
Yeah.
it's been a real pleasure and an honor to sort of get to manifest her in this way.
Yeah, that's pretty cool though. I do think a lot of times when you do create something, like you said, that's tangible like that,
Hmm.
it does become a part of you, and it also has its own identity that you kind of
Hmm.
live through, and it kind
Hmm.
of dictates, right, how you
Yeah.
create the rest of your clothes, the rest of the way she looks, because it has its own identity now. Like, you hate to say this, but it's kind of like a person, in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of how I look at my dolls. A lot of times they're muses to me, because when I don't want to do something in the doll space, or I'm fighting,
Yeah.
should I continue this? Should I continue this show? Anything, like, I have to look at them, because I think at the same time, like you said, there's people who are represented in those
Hmm.
dolls. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That need to see those things. And so it becomes not about you anymore creating this doll. It really becomes what these people feel this doll is to them.
Totally,
So
totally.
yeah, so I totally get that. So I know
Hmm.
you mentioned before you do everything, you sculpt, you paint, you style, you
Hmm.
photograph, and which is so amazing. I love the fact that you're so creative in all of those areas. But which part I think of the process feels more sacred to you, and which part challenges you the most?
Oh, good question. I think probably my favorite part of doll making is painting the faces. I love
Mm,
like, I sculpted Pigeon's face to be very like malleable. So it's very like ethnically ambiguous and you can kind of can look 20s or 70s or 80s or you can really do a lot with makeup. I grew up um loving the model Kate Moss a lot and
yes.
also reading the books of Kevin Aquan, who's a makeup artist.
Hmm.
And he had these amazing books. One of his more popular ones is called Making Faces, and he would take celebrities and paint them up as other celebrities using makeup and lighting and everything. And I was just fascinated with this idea of like how moldable some of these features are
Hmm.
through makeup. So Pigeon's face was sculpted specifically to so I could get the most amount of looks from her face without having to actually change the sculpt.
Oh, that's
Um,
cool. That's really cool.
so so as somebody who just loves makeup artistry and all the different ways you can change a face and how it can evoke different emotions, that's really my favorite part. Pigeon has gone through several generations of sculpts. It all more or
Mm,
less looks the same, but the face sculpt that I use now has been the same one that I've been using for the past 7 years, 7 or 8 years,
okay.
and it hasn't changed at all. And I'm still like amazed by like the new ways I can paint it that look different than other ways that I've painted it before.
Hmm.
Like it keeps evolving with makeup. So yeah, that's my favorite part. The most challenging part is definitely the sewing. I actually have some lovely uh, doll couturiers who help me. I usually so when for gar I can sew a garment for like a photo or a video or something where I'm
Hmm.
like I'm not going to sell it and do okay at it, but I've never been comfortable like finishing a garment to the point where I'm like, oh, this is of a good enough quality where I could
Right,
give
right.
this to somebody else. Um, so I have two people that I use in particular. One is Mark Tinkey, and the other is Sherilyn Lovell, who did
Hmm.
these dresses that are on the dolls behind me. But what I usually do is I go to the fabric store, I pick out all the fabrics that I want to use. I
Hmm.
usually send photos to the people that I'm working with to make sure that like everything is going to be an easy enough material to work with at
Right,
a
to
doll
work with.
scale.
Hmm.
And then I'll do a sketch, and then they'll sort of create the patterns and put the outfits together and sort of send me pictures of the process along the way.
Hmm.
So it's a very sort of collaborative process.
Okay.
Um, so that would be the most challenging part because I wouldn't be able to finish a doll garment to the level where I would be happy with it.
Hmm.
Um, but I do a lot of other stuff. I like the wigs and the painting and the sculpting and the printing and the photography and
I
those
think
are
that's
all
a lot.
areas that I'm
Don't
very
worry,
comfortable with.
that's a lot.
Yeah, but a lot
That's a
goes into a
lot.
doll. A lot of people don't
Yes.
don't really understand how many skills you have to have.
They do not understand that,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I think that's one of the things I think people find fascinating when they do listen to the show, especially people who are not in the doll community. And,
Mhm.
they're like, oh, you have a doll podcast, right? But they listen to it and they're just so amazed sometimes at what goes behind just bringing a doll to fruition. It's
Yeah,
not just the thought, like you said, it's the fabric. Do you use this much fabric because the doll scale is so different, you know what I
right.
mean, than from a human being, so you can't put a whole bunch of stuff on it, or you have to be very minimal in certain things that you use.
Hmm.
I mean, so it goes from, like you said, from all the things that you do, from sculpting to painting to styling, to
Yeah.
how you photograph the doll, to so it shows up in its best light. So yeah, it's
Hmm.
not just I just want to make a doll, or let's just present this. It's a lot
Yeah.
of other things behind that. I think that's why being a dollpreneur is interesting, because a lot of times you start being a creative like yourself, and then you have to understand the business of that, because at the end of
Yeah.
the day, you go from, yes, I want to show this doll. Okay, now it has an Instagram page. Now people want it. Now I have to
Mhm.
make it. And after I
Yeah.
make it, how am I going to market it and sell it?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a whole thing. So speaking of selling it and expanding, I know
Hmm.
Pidgin really has been incredibly successful, right? As a standalone singular creation. But
Hmm.
what I love about what you've done is how you have expanded to create stuff beyond the doll, to use the doll, but create something beyond the doll.
Yeah.
to expand your brand. So, how did that happen for you? When was the moment when you thought you needed to expand, beyond the doll itself? And I don't know, what helped you to decide when expansion was the right move for you? Because I think a lot of times that stops a lot of people. They don't know when to do that, or if
Sure.
they should do that. So, how did that work for you? Because I think you've been brilliant at that, and
Oh, thank you.
yeah, you really have been. You've been so brilliant at that, and it really has kept Pidgin to be very much more prominent in the dog community because of that.
Mhm.
So yeah, how did that happen for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting. Again, it's kind of a lot of it has to do with like social media and the times that we live in,
Mm,
and the way that the audience is sort of informed, like the art and the
mm,
creation of it. So as I said, I'd started the Instagram account. I was making dolls by hand. I was casting them myself in my basement of my apartment in Brooklyn. Uh, and it wasn't like fully enough to support me. I started working with, eventually I got a large enough audience, but like I mean, and I know you're very aware of this, but there's a very big difference between an art doll and like a commercially
yes.
manufactured,
Well,
commercial doll.
share a little bit about that for people who don't
Yeah.
know that, right? What
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that? What is that difference?
Um, so basically, so my dolls are called ball jointed dolls, and they're resin. They're strung internally with. This is my spiel that I give people when I meet at parties who don't know anything about dolls. It's like called a ball jointed doll. They're
You said
strung inter
ball jointed,
ball
right?
ball
Okay.
jointed dolls. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
they're cast in resin. They're strung internally, so that's what holds them together. So if you like cut the string, the whole doll will like fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas opposed to like a plastic
Mm,
doll, all the
mm-hmm.
joints are like plugged in. And the main difference is that as an independent artist, the molds to make a resin doll are accessible to me. Uh, I work with a factory or casting
Mm-hmm.
studio that produces them for me,
Right.
but it's at a very small scale. So the investment in the silicone molds to make a resin doll are accessible price wise, but resin as a material itself is expensive.
Mm,
So the doll is a more expensive
mm-hmm.
doll than a plastic doll. A
Right.
plastic doll, the molds, they're injection molded with plastic, and
Mm-hmm.
it's very intense machinery, and you have to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars into
Yes.
making that mold. And then the material of the plastic itself is inexpensive.
Mm-hmm.
So you can sell the doll for a lot cheaper, but you need to be able to sell at least like 10,000 dolls.
$10,000,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
It's like, so
Yes.
so that's sort of the difference. And as an independent artist, that's a tricky thing to do. And you really have to
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of investment and power behind you to be able to do that. Some have
Mm-hmm.
done it. But it just takes, you really have to be sure that this is the doll that,
Mm-hmm.
so as I've been developing Pigeon, so yeah, so that's how I create hers. She's made at a casting studio now. I send them my sculpt, they make a mold, they cast her in resin, they send me
Mm-hmm.
back the blank bodies.
Right.
Then I will paint them, dress them, wig them, style them,
Mm-hmm.
photograph them, and sell them either in like limited editions of like
Yeah.
20 to 50 dolls or as one of a kind art pieces like the dolls behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the difference between an art doll versus a commercially manufactured doll. But
Mm-hmm.
and then there's also doll artists that will take a commercially manufactured doll and like repaint it, restyle
Yes.
it. That's its
Mm-hmm.
own separate thing. That's not what I do, but that's its own
Mm-hmm.
separate art form.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so to answer your question about expanding Pigeon, my husband and I work together on Pigeon. His name is Eric. He handles sort of the admin.
Mm-hmm.
He has a legal background as well. So when we've done media and stuff, he can read contracts, and
Mm-hmm.
it's been crucial to the brand's
Yes,
success
very
to
helpful.
have
Yes. Yes.
him with it as well. So I always like to make sure people know that too. That really
Mm-hmm.
Pigeon is a two-person operation, and I would not be able to have had this success
Mm-hmm.
without Eric's help. But he used to be a lawyer. He decided to start helping me when the sort of orders and the organization of running a business became too much for me to handle on top of
Mm-hmm.
being a creative
Being a
person as
creative.
well.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started traveling around to different doll conventions so people could see them in person. So I would bring my resin dolls to like France or Italy or we never went to Asia, but we went all over the US,
Mm-hmm.
just different doll conventions so people could see them in person. And that's really when like the doll community embraced me and people could see my work in person and get to know me as an artist and sort of
Right.
understand the intention behind Pigeon. And I was doing that for probably about 3 or 4 years, where I had the Instagram account where pigeon people were doing like pigeon looks and pigeon makeup looks, but those people weren't buying my art. They were just interacting with me on social media,
Hmm.
and then I was supported by the doll community, um, which was sometimes there's a little crossover, but
Yeah, it is.
for the
Hmm.
most part, a lot of the people that knew me on Instagram weren't able to buy, $1,000
The
doll.
art doll, right?
Yeah,
Hmm.
an art
Hmm.
doll. So that was sort of my business model for a long time. During the pandemic, I started, my husband actually had to move home for a little bit to help with his parents. And so I was alone a lot, and I started going on TikTok and looking at videos. And I was like, okay, maybe I could start like sharing a little bit about the doll making process. Because that was another thing on Instagram. Pigeon Doll was her own
Right.
character and
Hmm.
brand, and I didn't really put myself into it a lot. I would to the point where people knew I was a person, but I didn't.
Hmm.
I kept a distance between it, and I tried to appear sort of like a larger brand, and I think a lot of people thought I was,
Hmm.
not just an independent artist, but like this is a stall that exists. And but you couldn't really do that on TikTok. You had to be very like just a lot more open about things. And I was like, I was alone a lot. It's like, let's start just making videos and let's start putting me in them, and let me start sharing a little bit about why I make dolls and who I am as a person. And it really uh, blew up. I got a big audience that I'd never had before, really, really fast, from making these doll videos. And I found out that
Hmm.
I'm actually a pretty good editor, and I can make content and tell stories. A lot of it has to do with
Right.
storytelling.
Hmm.
Um, so so yeah, so around 2020, I just had this like my videos would get so many views, and I had this whole new audience of young people. And again, there weren't people that were buying my dolls, but they were interested in my work. The first work that I was getting because of my expanded social media following was media work. So I was doing a lot of like sponsored content. So I did like two Pop Tarts ads and an ad for Netflix and an ad for like FX, American Horror Stories, and I would make
Hmm.
dolls and kind of, and brands would pay me to make a doll around their brand, which is really cool. And I got to do some
Okay.
music videos and um but still I would just get all these people like, oh, I love your work. I want to interact with it in some way. And as I had mentioned, producing an actual doll, especially one that looks like my handmade art dolls, was is not possible. So
Hmm.
um, Eric and I got into a partnership, and we got a licensing manager,
Mm.
and we started working on creating sort of a pigeon lifestyle brand where it was the
Okay.
aesthetic of the doll, but something that people could wear. So it was very playful. Like I think one of my purses is behind
Yeah.
me, and actually the necklace,
The necklace.
the mannequin, it was actually the purse strap. So the whole idea is that like everything's a little off scale. It's like a clothes that a doll would wear.
Hmm.
So that's kind of what the brand was, or is. That part of the brand is sort of
Right.
centered around is
Hmm.
taking, a lot of people dress up as pigeons. So how does a person who wants
Hmm.
to look like a doll? The idea that I designed the line
Hmm.
around.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like your pens and
Thanks.
I love them. I love your purses. They're so cool. I love your
Thanks.
masks. Your masks.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're beautiful. I am
Thank you.
so gonna, put money in my piggy bank for the one of
Yeah.
those because they're gorgeous. They're
Thank you.
absolutely gorgeous. So, I know you shared a little bit about, your upbringing a little bit and where you kind
Mhm.
of, were brought up and, really wasn't able to express who you really were in that space. How is showing up? I know you mentioned a part of that too about being on TikTok and what you needed to do to to grow your brand. But how is showing up being authentically you? How has that
Mhm.
shaped your success as an artist and as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. I think it was huge. I mean, as I was saying, like TikTok, at least the way it's a kind of a different platform now, but the
Mm-hmm.
sort of golden age of 2020, 21, 22, TikTok, it really was about this, like everybody was just being, it was this whole new platform, and everyone that was having success on it was just being really raw and
Mm.
real about who they were as people and finding these sort of communities. And as as a queer person and as a person who loves dolls and feminine things in general,
Mm-hmm.
um, I started to get a lot of messages from parents or young people
Mm-hmm.
that had sort of similar stories to me. And I realized just how important it was for me to just be kind of honest and put myself out there a little bit, even though it sort of made me uncomfortable because
Mm-hmm.
I wrongly assumed, when I was saying on Instagram how I kind of kept myself a little distant from the brand, that people would be weirded out by the fact that like Pigeon Doll is actually made by this big man with big hands, and that it would
Right.
somehow, or that female identifying people wouldn't take well to a doll being made by a man, even though
Mm.
it is very much a gender expression for me. It's how I
Right.
express femininity.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that anybody would really understand that. So I try to, because I love women and I want to, everything I do comes from a respect of women and femininity and just feminine identifying people in
Right.
general, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It,
Mm-hmm.
it, it comes from a sincere love and
Right.
admiration, but
Right.
I wasn't sure that that would necessarily be
Mm-hmm.
perceived that way. Growing up as a male presenting person, but also loving to draw women and femininity and beauty, I had very mixed reactions to my work from like the women in our church and stuff, and they
Mm-hmm.
didn't, you know, I I was always questioned, why are you only drawing women, or why do they only look like that, or what,
Right. Mm-hmm.
um, and I didn't have an answer. I was like, this is
This
what I want
is
to
what I
draw,
do. Right.
this is what I
Mm-hmm.
do.
Yeah.
Um, but the what I was getting back from the audience and the reaction was just so almost uniformly positive, and I could see how much it was. I don't know, just helping people like me feel seen.
Right.
I realized that those sort of messages I was given were just people not understanding my work, and I just had to be sort of authentically
Mm-hmm.
myself.
Yeah.
And you can't. I think it's really important for every artist to know that you can't speak to everybody.
That's right.
You at the end of the day, you have to just kind of make it for yourself and know where it's coming from. But even when I kind of started making dolls, I didn't really understand like how much it had to do with the language of gender and the language of femininity, and
Mm-hmm.
that I needed that outlet. I've needed that outlet all my life.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Pidgin, the name, the way it's spelled, Pidgin, actually it means like a hybrid language, or like if you spoke Spanish and I spoke
Mm-hmm.
French, but we both knew a little bit of German, and we came up with a weird German way to talk to each other, that would be called a Pidgin German language. It's this way people find to communicate through a language that exists, but is kind of its own language.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's just a very appropriate name for like my work and my dolls in general. Like it's very
Mm-hmm.
much a way that I can express femininity that isn't like necessarily like my native language in the way that I
Right.
present every day.
Right.
Again, I feel so lucky to be an artist in the age of social media. I mean, it has its downsides too, but
Yes.
the way it has connected me with my audience and helped me understand them, and also helped me understand myself
Mm-hmm.
through them and through the way that they're sort of perceiving my work, has
Right.
just been so invaluable, and
Yeah.
so I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah.
It's been a really beautiful experience.
I think what it did for you, I think it created a safe space for both of you, right?
Yeah,
For
yeah.
you and for the people who found you. Because
Hmm.
that's one of the things I've always, thought about is that when you are creating something, yes, not like, and you mentioned that, like you can't create something for everybody. It just doesn't work that way. You
Yeah.
create something, and the people who need to find you.
Hmm.
As long as you are, like you're saying, authentic about who you
Yeah,
are,
exactly.
and I think that's what happened for you. Like you realized that this was a space where you had to be authentic, because
Hmm.
otherwise you really could not share what Pigeon was about.
Exactly, exactly.
So yeah.
And through creating video content, I make visuals, and all of a sudden I needed to like sort of fill in the space
Mm-hmm.
with audio. So I started just telling stories from my childhood and things that I thought just kind of either abstractly or very directly
Mm-hmm.
influenced me to become the kind of artist that I am. So a lot of the stories are about like my sort of gender nonconforming
Right.
tendencies as a child, and they're usually kind of cheeky and funny or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just tell stories like that while I'm drawing or while I'm doing it, or
Right.
sometimes the drawing will have to do with what I'm doing. But a lot of my social media videos now don't even necessarily have to do with doll making or dolls anymore. Pigeon
Mm-hmm.
can be a lot
Yes.
of them just are telling my story. letting people know kind of where these dolls are coming from a little bit more. And I think it made um, the expression a little more well-rounded, and I
Hmm.
think people understand me and where the dolls are coming from. So,
Yes.
like to back to the original question, I think that had a big part to do with the success that I found
Hmm.
is just opening up about myself more and letting people know
Right.
who I
Who
am,
you are.
where what led me to become this kind of artist,
Right. Yeah.
um, and where it's coming from,
Hmm.
because it's not necessarily what you think, you know.
Yeah, that's so true. That's
Hmm.
so true. That's the thing. You can't just look at people and assume, like you
Yeah.
just cannot. Everybody has a story, and everybody comes to their, comes to where they're at from their story and how
Hmm.
they learn to craft it for themselves,
Yeah.
along their own journey. So that goes for everybody, and I
Hmm.
think being in a doll space a lot of times, especially talking to a lot of male doll creators. I've talked to a lot of male doll creators in this
Hmm.
show, and I still find it very, I don't know. I think for me, I have two sons, so I think I've always found it very challenging that in this space that men still can't be comfortable in this space
Yeah.
about them creating what it is that they love to create. You know what I'm saying? It's just so interesting. Like we're in 2026, like, and
Yeah.
there's so many doll makers who are males. And I
Yeah.
and they do come a lot from a background of being illustrators or things like that because they love
Hmm.
drawing. Like you said, the feminine part of the feminine part of what it is that
Their
they feel
spirit or their soul,
connected
or who they
to,
are. Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And they still have pushback, and young boys are still afraid to show
Yeah.
that part of who they are, and I think that's just really so it's so sad for me sometimes,
Yeah.
so I'm happy I get to talk to male doll creators because they need to see you guys out there. They need to see you out there being who you are and loving who you are, enjoying what it is that you love. And hopefully they find a safe space with somebody like you to say this
Hmm.
is okay to be who you are and be authentic. I think that's
No.
so important.
Yeah. No,
So thank
absolutely.
you for your work. I appreciate that.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. I appreciate you telling me that. No, I don't, I'm used to it now at this point, but I'm not super comfortable like being like a public person. I don't
Hmm.
like, I'm not a
Yes.
performer by
Right. No,
nature.
I get that.
But I've learned to recognize the importance of putting myself out there and being honest and sincere, and just showing people that you can be happy and successful
Yes.
and identify as male or female
Hmm.
or somewhere in
In
between,
between, right?
and that there's different ways to express it,
Yes.
and for some people
Yes.
it's dolls or art
Yes.
or writing characters for a
Hmm.
script or a movie, or like there's really no difference. Everybody makes up people all the time
Right.
that are a part of them. It's like
Yep.
it's part of so many focuses.
That's so true.
um, but I think a lot of it, especially in like our sort of society, a lot of it is sexism. I
Hmm.
think I was brought up to feel like it was shameful for a man to want feminine things. And that really
Yes.
has to do with an idea of like how people perceive women, that it would be less, that a woman would be less than, or,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
and,
Yeah.
and it's just not true. It's
No.
obviously, and, uh, there's so much power in femininity, and
Yeah.
uh, so much to be celebrated,
Yeah,
you know.
that's true. That's true. Thank you for saying that. We appreciate it. Let's talk a little bit about your sustainability. Like, how do you sustain yourself? You do a lot of work, you do handmade
Mhm.
work, creative work. How do you protect your creativity while running your
Yeah.
business and not burn out? Like, how does that
Oof.
work for you?
That's
He's
a
like, yeah, I still
yeah.
burn out. That's not.
Yeah, I'm constantly burnt out. Constantly burnt out.
I understand that.
Yeah. I'm I mean I'm so grateful to be a working artist and to be doing what
Hmm.
I do. And I've been actually like collecting photos for something, and I've had to go back through my archive of just all the photo, because I shoot content with my phone and I take a lot of pictures,
Hmm.
and so
Hmm.
I'm constantly having to unload my phone and put it on a hard drive. So I just have like just hard drives just full of memories and this stuff. And I was going through looking for images, and I'm all these projects that I forgot that I did or that I just haven't thought about
Hmm.
for a while. I'm like, God, I've been having so much fun. I'm so lucky
That's
to
good.
be able to do what I'm
Hmm.
doing, but I'm constantly burnt out. It, I think I think the way to combat it is to be comfortable with evolution and evolving
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that change is inevitable. Something that is successful for you for a little while isn't always going to be. And that can be scary because you when you feel like, oh, I found a winning formula. This is it. I've made it. I don't have to think about it anymore. I'm just gonna do this. Um, that's usually not going to be the case. That will eventually. So at this point, since I've been doing Pigeon for so long and I've been an artist for even longer, I'm very used to the idea of like, okay, this is working for a little while, but it needs to evolve into
Mm-hmm.
this. And um, so like, I started doll making. It started kind of as a photography sculpting project, and then started to become a business in like the sort of doll community. And then it became a media Pigeon became sort of a media outlet where I was like, it became less about selling dolls and more about selling videos of making dolls. And that was my business model for a while. And then that evolved into creating accessories that are in the theme of the dolls. But I still have to like make the content of doll making to support
Mm-hmm.
all of it. And I still have to keep making dolls and keep innovating and keep
Right.
changing the kinds of dolls that I make. See how far I can expand
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
idea of Pigeon to
Right.
keep myself interested and also, represent the amount of people that were paying attention to it. But yeah, I think just being really flexible and being open with opportunities and changes when they come,
I
yeah.
do like the fact that you did say, understand that there's always going to be change and
Mm,
figure out how you can change within that space, right?
yeah,
And not
exactly.
just stay, stuck in one way of even growing. Okay, yeah, so
Hmm.
this is growing, this is where I should be. And when things change, you can't adapt to that. So I
Yeah,
thank you for sharing that because I think
yeah.
I think that is really key in being an entrepreneur in general. Like
Hmm.
things are
Yeah,
always changing,
yeah,
always
exactly.
changing. So I appreciate you sharing that. What do you have coming up that you can share with us? That would be great.
Yeah. Well, I have a show. I'm participating in a group show
Mm-hmm.
on February. It opens February 7th here in LA at the Super
Mm-hmm.
Chief Gallery.
Mm-hmm.
My friend Linda, who goes by the artist name Creepy Gals
Mm-hmm.
on Instagram, she usually does it at least once or twice a year. She has a big show there, and I've been to two of them.
Mm-hmm.
She's this amazing artist, and she does all these different sculptures and neon work and paintings and big like inflatable thing.
Mm-hmm.
She's really amazing. She has this big show and she always has this line around the block of people trying to get in. It's this amazing space
Wow.
that she sort of created for her work here in LA. And but this is her first year where she invited other artists to participate in her show. So it's a Creepy Gals group show. And the only
Mm-hmm.
uh rule was that the work needs to be red and pink because her work is
Mm-hmm.
primarily red and pink together.
Okay.
So I created two dolls. Are actually these dolls behind me
Oh,
here.
they're so beautiful. Look at that.
Thank
That's
you.
cool. Those hoop
Yeah,
dresses.
they turned out
Nice.
really cool. I'm literally like I was like just finishing the wigs last night. There's a
Mm-hmm.
few little things here and there that I'm going to touch up.
How long does it
Uh,
run from, or is it just one day?
So the
Okay.
show goes from February 7th to March 1st, and you can look at the gallery is called Super Chief. I think they're open every day from like noon to 7 or
Okay.
most days. So you can go and take a look. The artwork's going to be amazing. There's, I think, 60 plus artists contributing work. So it's a big space.
Oh,
It's
that
really,
should be
really
really,
big.
really cool. That should be
Yeah,
really neat.
it's a big giant warehouse space in downtown LA. But it's one of the reasons I did the dresses so large. I was like, okay, I
Mm-hmm.
need to make this is such a big space. How do I make my dolls take up as much space as
Right,
possible so
right.
you can
Okay.
even see them in the room?
That's
Because
very cool. That would be
thanks.
really
Yeah, I'm
beautiful.
excited.
Yeah, to
I've
see
never
your work.
shown I never really show my aside from doll conventions, I never really show my dolls
Mm-hmm.
in live spaces
Mm-hmm.
or in a gallery context.
Yeah.
I wanted to, so I'm happy to have this opportunity. Um, and yeah, I'm excited, especially like as they're coming together. I'm like, okay, these dolls are looking really good.
That is so cool. I
I'm really
love
happy
it.
about them.
I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show. I think you've been marvelous and sharing a lot of things about your life and where you stand as a doll artist and creator and how you look at your pigeon doll and how you've helped it to grow and expand and how the community really has helped you evolve, I think,
Yeah.
within your own space. So I think that's really, really powerful. So before I go, I want to ask you one more question and then I
Hmm.
want you to share. how people can connect with you. So, um, if your dolls could carry one message forward to collectors or creators or future generations, what would you want that message to be?
Ugh. I think I mean, my dolls are fashion dolls. So my message is kind of about the validity and the sort of power of the expression of dressing and the power that fashion and style has. I think it's very often kind of brushed aside as something sort of superficial or, or again like feminine, people like,
Mm-hmm.
I think that I think that fashion is such a powerful and valid form of self-expression. And um, it may seem kind of silly to kind of put that as your mission statement, but
No.
yeah, I think that the power of style and fashion and self-expression
Mm-hmm.
and putting thought into um, the way you present is something just really to be celebrated, and it's fun, and it evolves, and it ever changing. And like I I think if I had a mission to put around my dolls, it would just be about supporting that idea that that fashion is smart, and fashion it's powerful. Fashion is
Yeah.
powerful,
Mm-hmm.
not even just fashion, but like, the appearance.
Appearance, yes.
It's a superpower,
True
that
that.
that everyone should have access to, and everyone should put value in,
That
uh
is powerful. People love
yeah.
fashion dolls. Love it because of fashion. I mean, I will tell you a really quick thing. Like I fell in love with Byron Lars dolls.
Hmm.
It was the first time I ever collected dolls. I mean, I wasn't a big collector. I had a couple of dolls here and there, but I fell in love with Byron Lars because of his fashion. Because those were dolls I had never seen. Well, granted, they were African American dolls, so I never saw African American dolls dressed the way he had them dressed.
Yeah,
And the fashion was so important to me. I love a good
exactly.
fashion doll, so I get it.
Yeah,
And that again, it's a message that you want to carry forward, and that you would like for your dolls to speak that, and that's just as valid and important and
yeah.
powerful. So thank you for sharing that. So where can everybody find your amazing work at? So you can share your social media with us. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, I'm pretty much on all platforms at Pidgin Doll, spelled Pidgindoll. I'm on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram and Red Note. I also have a personal account for on Instagram called just my name, J for Joshua David McKenney. I mean, that's more like my life, and so sometimes I share art on it, but if you want, that's a public account as well if you're interested in like sort of a little bit more behind the scenes. Yeah, I'm on all the platforms, and I'm very active on all of them. I have a pretty great YouTube community, so if you're on YouTube, that's a good place to follow me. I run the community tab there, and
Mm-hmm.
we do polls and stuff like that.
Oh, nice.
So like, it's a good way to sort of interact with the
Mm-hmm.
community there. But Instagram is also a great place to do it.
Okay, so everything's in the Pidgin Doll except for your
Personal
personal
Instagram. Yeah.
Instagram. Okay, very
Yeah.
cool.
Which is J David McKenney.
Great. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you
Hmm.
so much, Joshua.
Oh,
It's
you're
been
very welcome, Georgia.
so pleasurable and just I'm still giddy for having you on the show. I'm just gonna say that right now. But
Oh,
I want to
thank you.
thank you so much for saying yes to being on the Dollpreneur podcast. Thank you so much for your time and so much for your creativity. And thank you so much for the Pigeon Doll. We really
I
appreciate
appreciate
it.
that so much. It's been a real pleasure.
You're so welcome. Thank you guys. Thank you
All right.
everybody for watching and see you
Bye,
next
everyone.
week. Okay,
Mhm.
bye. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for joining us at the Dollpreneur podcast. We really hope you enjoyed the episode and feel inspired by our amazing guests, as well as learn something new about the creative people within the doll community. So don't forget to visit our website at www.thedollpreneurpodcast.com for more content. And please, we would love for you to stay connected to us. So please subscribe to the Dollpreneur podcast newsletter, YouTube channel, Instagram, and Facebook pages. And they can all be found at the website www.thedollpreneurpodcast.com. Thank you again for listening to the Dollpreneur podcast. And until next time, have a doll fabulous day.